Hi, I'm David. I'm 31. What happened a few months ago still resonates with a strange sense of peace, even though it started as an absolute nightmare. At my age, you're not just dating, you're building a foundation. Lauren and I were together for 5 years, engaged for 1.5. We were 3 months out from the wedding, deposits paid, invites sent. I thought I knew exactly who I was going to spend my life with. But, as it turns out, the truth sometimes hides behind coincidental run-ins and Instagram posts. The sun was setting later as we moved into May, casting these long, golden shadows across our living room. Everything felt like it was finally clicking into place. The wedding was months away. The guest list was finalized, and I was in that state of total, calm certainty. I remember sitting on the sofa, nursing a beer, thinking that this was the happily ever after everyone talks about. The air was warm, the house was quiet, and I had no idea that a ghost from her past was already standing in our doorway. I kept telling myself, don't be that guy, David. In your 30s, you're supposed to be past the petty jealousy of your 20s. I didn't want to be the insecure fiance who checks phones or asks for play-by-plays. I actually felt a weird sense of pride in trusting her, like my silence was a badge of maturity. But deep down, there was this tiny, cold needle of doubt. I was so terrified of looking like a toxic, controlling guy that I started lying to myself just to keep the peace. I justified her distance, wedding stress, because the alternative that I was being replaced was too pathetic to entertain. It started with the phone. It wasn't just that she was on it more. It was the way she held it, angled away from me, always face down on the nightstand. One evening, she laughed at a text, a genuine, sparkling laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. When I asked what was funny, she just shrugged and said, "Oh, just a meme in the alumni group." But she didn't show it to me. She never showed me the memes anymore. I was in the kitchen fixing dinner when she walked in, humming a tune I didn't recognize. "Hey, you're back late," I said, trying to keep it casual. "Gym session run long." She didn't look at me, heading straight for the fridge. "Oh, yeah, and I actually bumped into Marcus at the juice bar. Total coincidence. We ended up talking for like 40 minutes. He's going through a lot with his job. Poor guy." I felt my chest tighten. "Marcus, again? That's like the third time this week." "Lauren." She finally looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "It's a small city, David. Are you really going to do this? I thought we were more mature than this." "He's a friend. Do you not trust me?" The way she threw the word trust at me felt like a challenge. I stood there with a knife in my hand, staring at the carrots I was chopping, feeling like I was the one doing something wrong just by noticing. I had the words ready. I wanted to say, "It's not about trust, it's about boundaries." I wanted to ask why her random encounters always seemed to happen when I wasn't around. But I looked at her, saw the woman I was about to commit my life to, and I swallowed it. I didn't want to start a fight that would ruin our night. I chose to apologize. I chose to be the bigger person, even though every instinct I had was telling me I was being played. She gave me a quick, pitying kiss on the cheek and went to change. I stayed in the kitchen, the silence of the house feeling heavier than before, wondering why being the mature guy felt so much like losing. The atmosphere in our apartment shifted from warm to clinical almost overnight. It was 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, the blue light of her phone screen illuminating her face while the rest of the room sat in shadows. We were sitting on the same couch, but it felt like there was a canyon between us. Every time I looked over, she was typing, her face lit up with a smile that wasn't meant for me. My gut was screaming so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. Is she really just talking to a friend? Or am I watching my relationship bleed out in real time? I felt pathetic. There's this specific brand of shame that comes with wanting to ask your partner for the truth, of being terrified of the answer. I kept telling myself that if I just ignored the gut feeling, it would eventually go away. I was choosing a comfortable lie over a devastating truth because, at 31, the thought of starting over felt like a death sentence. She started taking her phone into the bathroom even just to brush her teeth, and the gym clothes. She was working out more than ever, But she'd come home with perfectly done hair and an aura of secrecy that no amount of sweat could explain. When I'd ask how her day was, the answers were one-word dead ends. I finally couldn't take the silence. "Lauren, hey, put the phone down for a second." She didn't look up. "Just a sec. I'm replying to a group chat." "It's always a group chat lately," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Is Marcus in that one too? Because it feels like he's in the room with us every night." She finally dropped the phone and sighed. A long, theatrical sound. "Oh my God, David, again? I'm just saying, you're distant. I'm right here, and you're somewhere else." "I'm right here," she snapped, gesturing to the couch. "You're the one making things weird. You're being so insecure, it's actually becoming a turn-off. Do you really want to be that guy? The clingy, paranoid fiancé?" "I'm not being paranoid. I'm being observant," I replied. "No," she said, standing up. "You're being exhausting. I'm going to bed." I stood there in the hallway, watching her walk away. I could have followed her. I could have demanded to see the phone right then and there. But her words, insecure, exhausting, hit their mark. I didn't want to be the villain in our story. I convinced myself that maybe she was right, that maybe I was the one suffocating her. So, I stayed in the living room, alone, choosing to believe her labels instead of my own eyes. I sat back down in the dark, the silence ringing in my ears. I felt small, not like a man protecting his relationship, but like a kid waiting to be told it was okay to breathe again. Thursday, 1 a.m., the house was wrapped in that heavy, suffocating silence that only exists when you're waiting for someone who's staying out too late. I'd fallen asleep on the sofa under the wool throw blanket we'd bought together for our first apartment. I was in that hazy, half-awake state where the world feels safe until the sharp, aggressive vibration of my phone on the coffee table sliced through the dark like an electric shock. I reached for the phone, squinting against the harsh glare of the screen. Maybe she's texting to say she got an Uber, I thought. But the notification was from Instagram. My heart skipped a beat before I even opened the app. Why was she posting at 1 a.m.? I desperately wanted it to be a blurry shot of cocktails or a cheesy group selfie with the girls. I was actually praying that my paranoia, the thing she had weaponized against me for months, was real, just so I wouldn't have to face what I knew was coming. I flashed back to how she'd gotten ready that night. The new dress she claimed she was saving for our anniversary dinner. The perfume I'd bought her last Christmas that she usually said was too much for a casual night out. When she left, she didn't even lean in for a kiss. She just tossed a "see you later" over her shoulder without looking back, like I was a roommate she was tired of seeing. I unlocked the phone. Lauren's profile. A new carousel post. First photo. Her and the girls holding up lemon drops. The standard girls' night shot. I swiped. Second photo. Them on the dance floor. Laser lights. Blurry smiles. I swiped. The third photo. The world around me literally ceased to exist. There was Marcus. In the dim light of a VIP booth, Lauren was sitting directly on his lap. His arm was draped over her waist, pulling her flush against him. She was laughing, not that polite, strained smile she'd been giving me lately, but a wild, uninhibited laugh, had tilted back, exposed. The caption read, "Sometimes you miss the old days." I read the words out loud in the empty room. The old days ... My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from someone else's lungs. My thumb hovered over the call button. I wanted to dial her number, scream, and demand she explain herself right this second. I wanted to drive to that club and rip her out of that booth. But I stopped. I looked at my hand, it was shaking. I realized if I called now, she'd find a way to spin it. She'd call me crazy again. I took a breath, and instead of calling, I hit the sleep button. I decided right then that I wasn't going to give her the chance to delete the evidence of my humiliation. I set the phone down face up, and the screen timed out, leaving me in total darkness. 5 years of history, our September wedding, the Bali honeymoon, it all just dissolved into a cold pile of pixels, leaving nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table watching the sky turn from a bruised purple to a pale, indifferent gray. By the time I heard her key in the lock at 9 a.m., I was on my fourth cup of coffee, and it had gone stone cold. The house smelled like old rain, and the floral perfume she drenched herself in the night before a scent that now made my stomach churn. I watched her walk in, still wearing yesterday's makeup, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel the urge to ask if she was okay. I felt nothing. Is this really it? I wondered. Is this the woman I was going to sign a legal contract with? I felt a flicker of self-blame. Maybe I had been too soft. Maybe I had invited this disrespect by being so understanding. But then I looked at the photo on my phone again, and the shame vanished, replaced by a cold, surgical realization. I wasn't the problem. I was just the one standing in the way of the life she clearly still wanted. She didn't even look guilty. She walked past me toward the coffee pot, humming to herself, acting like it was just another Friday morning. She didn't offer a hug or a sorry I stayed out so late. The biggest red flag wasn't the photo anymore. It was her total lack of awareness that she had done anything to hurt me. She had already checked out of us a long time ago. She poured a cup of coffee and finally looked at me, leaning against the counter. Rough night. You look like you haven't slept. I saw the post, Lauren, I said. My voice was unnervingly calm. She rolled her eyes and took a sip. Oh my God, here we go. It's just a fun picture. David, we were at a club. Everyone was drinking, and Marcus was just being Marcus. Don't be dramatic. It's not like we did anything. You sat on his lap, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You told 1,200 people, including my family and yours, that you missed the days when you were with him. While wearing the ring I paid for, it was a caption, David. A joke. God, you are so suffocating lately. I'm going to brunch with my mom to get away from this interrogation. We can talk when you've calmed down. She set her mug in the sink with a sharp clack, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door without a second glance. I could have chased her to the car. I could have begged her to stay and work on it. For a split second, I actually thought about the wedding deposits, the $5,000 venue fee, the photographer we'd spent months picking out. I thought about the sunk cost of 5 years. But then I imagined standing at that altar in 3 months, looking at her, and knowing that everyone in the pews had seen her on Marcus's lap. I realized that losing the money was nothing compared to losing my soul. I stayed in my chair and let the door slam. The silence that followed her departure wasn't heavy anymore. It was light. For the first time in months, the air in the apartment felt breathable, because I knew that when she came back, there wouldn't be a we left to argue about. The apartment was eerily still after the door slammed. The morning sun was hitting the dust motes in the air, making everything look abandoned. Even though I was still sitting there, I walked over to the small floor safe in the closet, the place where we kept our important things. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were cold. I felt like a man cleaning up a wreckage, moving with a mechanical, detached precision. I held the velvet box in my palm, feeling its weight. $12,000. That wasn't just money. It was 2 years of skipping vacations, working double shifts, and dreaming of a house with a yard. I felt like a fool for ever thinking a diamond could anchor someone who didn't want to be held. I had this fleeting thought, is this too much? Am I being petty? But then I remembered her laugh in that photo. She didn't care about my security when she posted that for the world to see. So why was I still trying to protect her reputation? I remembered how she used to stare at the ring more than she looked at me. She'd spend 20 minutes trying to get the perfect lighting for a ring selfie to show off on her stories, tagging the jeweler, but never me. The ring wasn't a symbol of our commitment to her. It was a trophy, a status symbol. She loved the idea of being a bride, but she clearly hated the reality of being a partner. I cleared off the coffee table and laid out a piece of black velvet fabric I found in her craft drawer. I placed the ring in the center, under the harsh living room light. The 1.5-carat diamond mocked me with its brilliance. I took out my phone, the same phone that had delivered the killing blow to my relationship hours earlier. Click. One shot of the diamond. Click. One shot of the appraisal certificate. I opened Facebook Marketplace. My heart hammered against my ribs as I typed the words. Title, engagement off. Ring for sale. Make an offer. Description, 14K white gold, 1.5 carat round solitaire. Excellent condition. Barely worn. Comes with original GIA certificate and a lifetime of broken promises. Selling because it comes with too much baggage for me to carry. I hovered over the post button. This wasn't just an ad. It was a declaration of war. For a second, I thought about the mature way to do this. I could have just left the ring on the kitchen counter with a polite note. I could have called her dad and had a quiet, respectful conversation about returning the family heirlooms. But Lauren didn't do quiet. She did public. She did performative. If she wanted to use social media to humiliate me, I was going to use it to set myself free. I pressed post and felt a strange, electric jolt of adrenaline. As the listing active notification popped up, a weird sense of peace washed over me. The ring was no longer a promise. It was just a piece of carbon and metal. And for the first time in 5 years, I was the one holding the camera. The quiet didn't last long. About 40 minutes after the post went live, my phone transformed from a communication device into a ticking time bomb. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at nothing, when the screen lit up with her mother's contact photo. I knew the shockwaves had hit. The bubble we'd lived in for 5 years hadn't just popped. It had detonated, and the debris was starting to fall on everyone we knew. I felt this strange, cold adrenaline. Here we go. I knew I'd be the villain in her mother's story. I knew the humiliation card was coming. A part of me, the old David, wanted to apologize, to take the post down and handle it privately, but then I remembered the 47 likes on her photo with Marcus. I remembered her friends commenting "live your best life" while she was sitting on another man's lap. They wanted a show. Fine, I was just giving them the finale. I realized in that moment that Lauren's mother, Patricia, had always enabled this behavior. I remembered her laughing off Lauren's flirting at parties, saying she was just a free spirit. The red flag wasn't just Lauren's lack of boundaries. It was the entire family's culture of sweeping uncomfortable truths under the rug to keep up appearances. They didn't care that she betrayed me. They only cared that I made it look bad on Facebook. I picked up the third call from Patricia. I didn't even get a "hello, David? What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed, her voice cracking through the speaker. "Take that disgusting post down right now. You are humiliating our family. That ring belongs to Lauren." "Actually, Patricia," I said, my voice terrifyingly steady, "in this state, an engagement ring is a conditional gift." The condition was a wedding. Lauren broke that condition the second she posted herself on Marcus's lap. The line went dead, and 3 minutes later, Lauren was calling. "You have no right." She was hysterical, crying, but with that edge of anger she used when she was losing. "That's my ring. You're being cruel and vindictive just because I had one drink and took one stupid photo." "It wasn't the photo, Lauren," I said. "It was the fact that you thought I was too weak to do anything about it. Keep the memories. I'm keeping the equity." Then, her dad, Robert, called. Robert and I were close. We'd gone fishing, talked about the future. I expected him to yell, too. When I answered, I was ready for a fight. "David," he said, his voice heavy. "What is this about?" "Lauren says you've lost your mind. Check your texts, Robert. I just sent you the screenshot." There was a long, agonizing silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end. I could have apologized for involving him. I could have tried to soften the blow. But I stayed silent. Finally, I heard a faint, hollow, "oh, double quotes." That was it. No defense, no anger, just the sound of a father realizing his daughter wasn't who he thought she was. I hung up the phone and felt a wave of nausea mixed with a terrifying sense of freedom. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had vaporized it. There was no going back now. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want to. By Friday evening, my phone wasn't just ringing, it was melting. It turns out, people in a small city are starved for a drama that has receipts. I sat in my darkened living room, the glow of the screen reflecting off my face as I watched my personal tragedy transform into public entertainment. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life, but I was the one holding the remote. I saw the threads on Reddit popping up. Guy sells ring on marketplace after fiance cheats on IG. I scrolled through the comments. One side called me a legend, the other called me a petty narcissist. I felt this brief flash of shame. Am I taking this too far? I wondered. But then I realized Lauren was the one who invited 1,200 people to watch her sit on her ex's lap. I didn't start the fire. I just stopped trying to put it out with my own blood. I wasn't being petty. I was being honest. And in a world of curated lies, honesty feels like an attack. A local news producer reached out, and that's when I realized how deep the image obsession went for Lauren. She had spent 5 years carefully crafting this perfect couple persona for the world. The biggest red flag I'd ignored was how much she cared about looking happy versus actually being happy. To her, the betrayal wasn't the photo with Marcus. The betrayal was me breaking the perfection filter and showing the world the raw, ugly truth behind it. I met the news crew in a park downtown. The reporter, a woman who looked like she'd seen 1,000 messy breakups, adjusted her earpiece. David, people are saying this is a bit extreme. Why not just handle this behind closed doors? She asked, the camera lens staring at me like a giant, unblinking eye. I took a breath and looked straight into the camera, because the closed doors were wide open the moment she hit post on that photo. For months, I was told I was crazy. I was told I was insecure. I was gaslit into doubting my own eyes. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because I refuse to be the bitter ex who quietly fades away while she tells everyone we just grew apart. She started the story publicly. I'm us providing the ending. The reporter nodded, a flicker of genuine respect in her eyes. You're okay with the fallout. I'm okay with the truth, I said. It's the lies that were killing me. Right before the segment aired, Lauren's lawyer sent a cease and desist email. My finger hovered over the reply button. I could have pulled the interview. I could have stayed quiet and handled the legal battle in the shadows. But I thought about all the guys who get blamed for breakups they didn't cause. All the people who suffer in silence to protect someone who didn't protect them. I hit ignore on the email and told the producer to run the clip. Watching myself on the 10 o'clock news was the most isolating experience of my life. I was a local headline, a talking point at bars, a meme on Twitter. I was completely alone. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was hiding. Saturday morning felt different. The air was crisp, and the manic energy of the viral explosion had settled into a cold, focused clarity. I drove to the coffee shop downtown, the same one where Lauren had supposedly bumped into Marcus all those times. It was a poetic kind of irony. I had an envelope in my pocket and a velvet box that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I sat at a corner table, watching the steam rise from my cup, feeling like a ghost returning to a place I no longer belonged. I kept looking at the door, half expecting Lauren to burst in and cause a scene, or a news crew to follow me. Is this really how 5 years ends? I thought. In a cash for diamond exchange with a stranger, I felt a strange flicker of guilt for the ring itself. It was a beautiful thing, ruined by an ugly situation. But as I sat there, the guilt was swallowed by a massive, overwhelming sense of relief. I wasn't waiting for a text anymore. I wasn't wondering where she was. I was just waiting for a beer. I realized then that I had spent the last year of our engagement feeling like a salesman constantly trying to sell Lauren on our future. Sell her on why she should stay home with me instead of going out. Sell her on why I was enough. I had been pleading for her attention. The red flag wasn't that she liked the ring. It was that I had to pay $12,000 just to feel like I had a seat at the table of her life. Susan walked in, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a sensible coat. She sat down, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. No judgment, just business. I pushed the velvet box across the table. She opened it, and the diamond caught the morning sun, sparkling with a brilliance that felt totally disconnected from my reality. It's stunning, she whispered. She took out a jeweler's loupe, checked the laser inscription against the certificate, and nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope tied with a rubber band. 9,500, all hundreds. You can count it if you want. I trust you, I said, and for the first time in months, I meant that word. I took the envelope. It was thick, heavy, and smelled like paper and ink. As I tucked it away, I felt a literal, physical tension release from my shoulders. The condition of the gift was gone. The debt was settled. Susan lingered for a second as she put the ring in her purse. She looked like she wanted to ask 1,000 questions about the news story, about the baggage mentioned in the ad. I had the chance to vent, to tell her every dirty detail and get one last hit of sympathy. But I didn't. I didn't want to talk about Lauren anymore. I didn't want to be the guy with the ring story for 1 second longer than I had to be. I chose to let the silence stay respectful. I hope your next chapter goes better, Susan said, standing up to leave. I think it will, I replied, and a genuine smile touched my face, the kind that reaches your eyes. As she walked out with the ring, I realized I didn't just sell a piece of jewelry. I had successfully auctioned off the last piece of a life that was never going to make me happy. Autumn had arrived, and the air had that sharp, biting chill that makes everything feel a little more permanent. The wedding day that was supposed to be September 15th had come and gone like any other Tuesday. I was finally starting to sleep through the night without reaching for the other side of the bed. I was sitting in my new, smaller apartment, drinking a beer and watching the rain hit the window. When the new message ping echoed against the bare walls, I saw her name in the sender field and my heart didn't even race. It just felt heavy. What's left to say? I wondered. I debated hitting delete without opening it. Part of me was scared that she'd find a way to make me feel guilty again, to twist the knife one last time. But another part of me, the part that had lived through the gaslighting, needed to see if she was finally capable of saying a single word of truth. I realized I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for a receipt of my own sanity. As I read her words, I realized the ultimate red flag. Lauren was addicted to being wanted, but she was terrified of being known. She didn't run to Marcus because he was better. She ran to him because he was a fantasy. With me, she had to be a partner, a grown-up, a person with flaws. With Marcus, she could just be the girl who got away. The red flag I'd missed for 5 years was that she didn't want a life. She wanted a highlight reel. I scrolled through the long, rambling text of the email. I've been in therapy for 3 months now, she wrote, and I'm finally learning to call things by their real names. I committed emotional infidelity. I know that now. I wasn't in love with Marcus, David. I was just terrified of our wedding. I felt like the walls were closing in, and instead of talking to you, I sought validation from him because he made me feel like I was 20 again. She went on to describe how Marcus had predictably ghosted her the moment the news story broke. The second it wasn't a secret anymore, the second I was actually single and available, he stopped answering my texts, she admitted. He didn't want me. He just wanted the thrill of taking something from you. I lost everything for a man who didn't even want to buy me a drink once the engagement was off. I sat there for a long time with the cursor blinking in the reply box. I could have unleashed months of pent-up anger. I could have told her how much the emotional infidelity had cost me in therapy bills and lost sleep. I could have mocked her for Marcus dumping her. But I looked at the screen and realized that any response was just more fuel for a fire that had already turned to ash. I chose to do something I couldn't have done 6 months ago. I closed the laptop. Reading her confession didn't feel like winning. It just felt like a long, exhausted sigh. She was finally telling the truth, but she was telling it to a man who had already moved on to a different story. 6 months. It's funny how time can feel like a lifetime and a heartbeat all at once. I'm standing on the balcony of my new place, watching the city lights flicker on, one by one. There's a cool breeze tonight, but for the first time in a long time, I don't feel a chill. I feel grounded. The frantic, buzzing noise of the viral drama has faded into a quiet, steady hum of a life that actually belongs to me. People still ask me if I regret going public. They ask if I should have just taken the high road and walked away in silence. I used to wonder that myself in the middle of those sleepless nights. Was I too loud? Was I too cold? But then I realize, silence is what allows people like Lauren to rewrite history. If I had stayed quiet, the story would have been that we just grew apart, and I would have been the one carrying the secret of her betrayal like a heavy, invisible weight. I'm not looking for revenge anymore. I'm just enjoying the lightness of not having to carry her lies. I see the red flags so clearly now, not just in her, but in the way I used to apologize for things I didn't do. I've realized that my biggest mistake wasn't trusting her, it was distrusting myself. I had a gut feeling for months, and I traded it in for a mature fiance label that didn't even fit me. The biggest warning sign was that I felt I had to be perfect just to keep her honest. Now, I know that if the truth destroys a relationship, then that relationship deserved to be destroyed. I was out at a bar with some friends last weekend, and a guy recognized me from the news story. "Hey, you're the ring guy, right?" he asked, holding a beer. Man, that was savage. Do you ever feel bad for her? I took a sip of my drink and looked him in the eye. I don't feel bad for the truth, I said. She made a choice to be public with her life. I just made the choice to be honest about mine. There's a difference between being petty and being done. He nodded, clinked his glass against mine, and said, "Fair enough. That's the thing about a loud truth, it doesn't need to be defended. It just stands there. UNMOVABLE. I had one last drafts folder in my email with all the things I wanted to say to her, all the ways she hurt me, all the evidence I'd gathered. I could have hit send. I could have kept the door ajar just enough to see her suffer a little longer. But I looked at that delete icon and felt a surge of genuine power. I didn't need her to understand my pain to move past it. I didn't need her apology to be whole. I hit delete all, and for the first time, I didn't look back to see if anything was left. She taught me that social media is a weapon, and she's right, it can be used to humiliate. I learned that it can also be used as a shield for your own dignity. I told my truth loudly so that I wouldn't have to whisper it to myself for the rest of my life. The engagement is over. The ring is gone. But for the first time in 31 years, I finally know exactly who I am. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments.